Today we'll be looking at something a little different, in genders. This video lists off all the gender differences in every single version of Pokémon. Well, the released versions. I don't even want to know what the difference between a male and female Braxus is. But before we do that, if you want to support me and get yourself some limited edition Jethertex memorabilia, then click on that link in the description to get yourself a pair of limited novelty Pokeball socks, thanks to the people at Backdrop. Why socks, you might be asking? Well, I am a hipster. I guess, I don't know. And I thought it'd be fun to try something small out before we jumped into the world of having shirts, hoodies, and waifu pillows, I guess. Also in the description, there is a link to a little shirt survey on what you'd like to see in the future. And if 4,000 people fill it out, we can have some Jethertex shirts in the near future based on your design ideas. So make sure to get yourself a pair of fun, cozy Pokeball socks. There's only a week to buy them, so get to them soon. And as I said, fill out that form for some future t-shirts, inspired by your designs, based on me. Yay! Thanks for listening, and on with the video. I received a question asking, how many gender differences are there in Pokemon? Unfortunately, I couldn't find the comment again, so thanks, Cool Dude 12, because you're a cool dude, and you might be 12. So I thought it'd be fun to list them all off, and talk about the little differences in the designs of each gender while counting them down. The subtle differences that the Pokemon Company put between the male and female versions of certain Pokemon is almost like a fun little version of Where's Waldo. So without further ado, let us see just how many of these little differences there are, and look at the Pokemon gender differences in every generation. So far, so up to Gen 6. Hopefully no one gets triggered. The female Venusaur actually has a seed in the middle of its flower. I guess that's showing off its fertility and ability to create more Bulbasaurs. The female Butterfree has purple spots on its lower wings. In Generation 6, however, the spots are changed to black. The female versions of Rattata and Raticate both have shorter whiskers. Pikachu has a little cute one, as the female version of Pikachu has a little heart for its tail. Aww. Which means that the female Pikachu ends up evolving into a female Raichu that lacks the point on its tail. Now this one's a little tricky, seeing as Nidoran male and Nidoran female seem like completely different Pokemon just with the same name. This also makes them the only Pokemon that has gender differences and a completely different Pokedex number. They also, of course, have different colors, different designs, a few different moves, and evolve into completely different Pokemon. The female version of Zubat and Golbat both have smaller fangs. The female Gloom has one large spot on each of its buds, however the male has a bunch of tiny ones. This translates into female Vileplume, as the spots on the female are actually bigger than the spots on the male. The female Kadabra and Alakazam both have smaller whiskers than their male counterparts. Doduo and Dojiro's gender difference is that their necks are completely different colors. The male Doduo and Dojiro both have black necks, while the females instead have beige ones. Female Hypno is just a little bit fancier than male Hypno, as she has a little bit more collar fur than her male counterpart. For female Rhyhorn and Rhydon, their horns are smaller than the male versions. However, I don't know if it's the male version that has a bigger horn, or the female having a smaller one. Goldeen and Seaking also have this same problem, where the male has a larger horn, or the female has a smaller one. You can never be too sure. Now this one might be a little bit trickier to see, as the female Scyther has a larger abdomen than the male version. Now, it could be that the male has a smaller abdomen, but I'm pretty sure it's actually the female having a larger one, so it can give birth, I think. Anywho, this one is easier to see, as the male Magikarp has yellow whiskers, where the female one has white whiskers. This translates to Gyarados, as the male version has blue whiskers, and the female version has white whiskers. Starting off Gen 2, we have another grass starter with some gender differences. The male version of Meganium has longer antennas than the female version. Female Ledyba and Ledian both have smaller antennas than the male versions. This one is pretty hard to see, as Xatu has 3 yellow stripes on the side of its body, where the female version only has 2. If you zoom in there, very, very closely, you can see that extra yellow stripe. Female Sudowoodo has a smaller antenna than male Sudowoodo. The male Politoed has very slightly bigger cheeks than the female Politoed. Male Aipom has less of a mohawk than female Aipom. Female Wooper has less signal on her Wi-Fi than the male Wooper does. This sort of applies to Quagsire, as the female has smaller dorsal fins. The male Murkrow has a slightly chunkier hat than the female and also has a slight highlight on its foot. Female Wobbuffet is probably one of the ones you've noticed the most, as it actually has lipstick. Girafarig female has more yellow than the male Girafarig. You can see this indicated by that extra spot being brown instead of yellow. Gligar male's tail is bigger than female Gligar. The male Steelix actually has an extra spike on its jaw. Female Scizor follows the trend of female Scyther as its abdomen is larger, but easier to see. Female Heracross just wants to be Pikachu as its horn is a heart. The female Sneasel has a much shorter feather than the male Sneasel. Female Ursaring actually has more hair covering its armpits. The male Piloswine has larger tusks. Every single suction cup of female Octillery is smaller than the male. The horns on male Houndoom's head are bigger than the female version. Also, wow, I never noticed how much their tail looks like a mouse cursor. To round off Gen 2, Donphan has larger tusks on the male version than the female version. Generation 3 starts off with possibly the hardest gender difference to see. If you zoom all the way into the back of male Torchic, you can see the tiniest black speck on his butt. Combusken's difference is way easier to see, as the feathers on the male's head are bigger. This then translates to Blaziken, as both the spikes on its face and the long hair behind its back is bigger on the male version. Female Beautyfly's red spots are smaller, which means female Dustox had to copy it by making its antennas smaller. Female Ludicolo has much thinner stripes than male Ludicolo, as you can tell by how much more yellow is on her body. Female Nuzleaf has a smaller leaf on its head, which means that when it evolves into Shiftry, the female version has smaller leaves on her hands. This one is pretty cute, as the male Metatite's ears are a bit higher up than the female's. On the other hand, the stick on male Metacham's head is bigger than the one on the female version. For Roselia, the leaf covering the female's legs is longer than the one covering the male's. The yellow feather on female Gulpin's head is smaller than the one on the male, which then translates to female Swalot's yellow whiskers being shorter as well. Both Numel and Camerupt have smaller humps on the male. Cacturne's difference is a little bit more unique, as the female version has one big diamond in the middle of its chest, whereas the male has two small diamonds instead. Male Melodic's eyebrow hair is actually shorter. Now this one is a little bit harder to see, but the spike on female Relicanth's face is a bit shorter than the male. There is also a little bit less of the lighter color on the spike itself. Generation 4 actually has no gender differences for any starter Pokemon, so here we are Starlying off with Starly having more white on the male's forehead than the female's. This then translates to male Staravia and Staraptor both having larger spots on their forehead. Male Bidoof actually has one extra tail poof. Male Bibarel has beige circles beside its nose, whereas the female does not. Female Kricketot has a larger collar behind its neck, whereas female Kricketune has a smaller mustache. This evolution line is a bit tricky. Female Shinx has blue feet in the back and smaller hair on its head. Female Luxio then has less hair on the back of its legs and smaller hair on its head. And finally, female Luxray only has smaller hair on its head. Female Roserade follows Roselia as the leaf on its back is longer. Combee is probably one of the most recognizable differences in gender sprites, because if you see that red dot, that means that's the female and you can get yourself a Vespiquen. That tiny blue stripe on Pachirisu is smaller on the female than it is on the male. For both Buizel and Floatzel, the male version has two spots on its back, whereas the female only has one. The male Ambipom has shorter hair on his head. Male Gibble, Gabite, and Garchomp all have little cuts in their fins, whereas the females don't. Hippopotas and Hippowdon both have different colors for the bodies of the females. For Hippopotas, the colors are just inverted. Female Krogonk's bandages are a little bit higher up than the male. The female Toxicroak has a smaller bulb in its neck than the male version. The tail on male Finneon is smaller than on the female. This then means that male Lumineon has smaller fins as well. Female Snover has more white on its body, whereas the male Snover has more brown. Abomasnow female has longer fur on its chest. Female Weavile has shorter feathers where its ears are. The horn on the top of male Rhyperior's head is bigger than on the female. There is more blue on the fingers of the male Tangrowth than there is on the female. And finally for Gen 4, Mamoswine female has smaller tusks than Mamoswine male. Generation 5 is where they really started to lay off on the gender differences. Starting off with Unfaisant Male looking like a fairly decent bird Pokemon, while the female version looks like it has the bird flu and was dipped in mud. The male and female versions of Frillish and Jellicent are vastly different. The female version is pink and sort of has a design based off of a princess and a queen, whereas the male is blue and has that prince and king look. Then we move on to Generation 6, where there are only 2 different Pokemon with gender differences. The first being Pyroar, where the female version has long, sleek hair and a smaller body, whereas the male version has a full mane around its head and a heftier body. This brings us to our final Pokemon, Meowstic, where the colors are essentially inverted, with changes to make the female look more feminine and the male look more masculine. Male Meowstic and female Meowstic, however, do have different moves, where the male version learns more status moves and the female version learns more attacking moves. In addition to this, male Meowstic has the hidden ability Prankster, whereas the female Meowstic has the hidden ability Competitive. That means there's a total of 99 gender differences. 98 if you don't count Nidoran male and Nidoran female. There are also no gender differences in any of the Mega Evolutions, even if the regular Pokemon has one. Well, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed this kind of different video for today. I had a bunch of ideas for a video like this, such as version-exclusive Pokemon and differences in Pokemon versions, and thought it would be fun to start off with this topic after seeing that comment. Hope you enjoyed, and please make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Make sure to let me know in the comments below some topics you'd like me to list off in a future video like this. Also, don't forget to check out those links in the description to get yourself a pair of socks and vote on some designs for t-shirts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on catching!